Joining us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, Scott Grayson writes for 97.3 ESPN.com. After every Eagles game, he check out his Grayson's grades and his inside the locker room perspective with video from the players themselves. And like I said, he joins us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Scott, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. How are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good. So before we get into your grades specifically, you've been around this team all year long. You've traveled with them all over the place, even to London. You have done, first of all, congratulations on making it to every game. Yeah, that's hard in and of itself, I know, because of the way travel is in today's world. But on a more serious note, I do have to ask you, what was the mood of this team yesterday? What was the mood in the locker room? You're talking about a team that has gone through a lot of ups and downs this year, and then finally they get into the postseason on the last day of the year.
Yeah, it's just been wild. I mean, when you think back to 4 weeks ago, before they were playing the Rams, everybody was pretty much counting them out. And then, they win that game. And you start thinking, gee, maybe things can fall further their way, but they're just going to need probably too much help. And ultimately, here we are, and they made it in. And, you play your best football at the end of the year, and anybody can get to that final, the pinnacle or the peak of the mountain, if you will, which is the Super Bowl. And right now, I don't know that there's a team that's playing in the NFC, other than maybe the Saints, as well or as hot as the Eagles are. And so they're dangerous. They've got the experience of having been there before. But you asked about the locker room, and I'll tell you, I'll paint the picture for you. They're walking down. I was standing outside the locker room as they came off the field, and these guys were talking back and forth saying, did you see the score? It's 21-10, 21-10. And another guy would say, oh, no, they just made a field goal. It's 24-10 Chicago. So they were well aware as they were walking off the field of what was going on. And then they got in the locker room, and they told us, they're not going to open the locker room for interviews until after that Bears-Vikings game has gone final. Next thing you know, and we're all watching in the hallway in the media on our phone, to see the scores, and next thing you know, the music starts blasting, and they spend about 10 minutes kind of celebrating. And when we walked in, I think the thing that most impressed me was these guys were very subdued. They were very calm, very professional, and my questions to a lot of them were, you guys were celebrating, and now it seems like you guys have already turned the page, and it's on to Chicago. And a lot of the veterans said, yeah, we don't have time to celebrate. We weren't looking to just make it into the playoffs. As Malcolm Jenkins said, we weren't just looking to, squeak through the door here. We knocked it down, and we're going to go make some noise. So, they're not expecting to just go to Chicago and be one and done. They really expect to make some noise here and maybe make a run.
Scott, before we get into your grades, I want to ask you one more point about the locker room in general, and that is, I was listening to what Fletcher Cox had to say and different guys that, you talked to yesterday, and it seems like you mentioned it. They're not just calm, but they've already turned the page. And you kind of have to wonder, if this team didn't go on the run that they did last year, if this team didn't have the Super Bowl run, if this team didn't have Carson Wentz get injured, Nick Foles come in, if all the things that happened for last season didn't happen, is there a part of you that wonders if this team would be handling it differently or maybe not as well this year?
Well, I think there's no doubt that helped. And I think, a lot is made sometimes of the age of a team. And you look at this team, and they have a lot of veterans. They definitely do. They are an older team. And to a certain extent, that probably played a role in some of their injuries this year. But you look at the fact that they've been through this. A lot of these guys have been through this, and you mentioned the run last year. That certainly helped to have been through that, to have known that, the adversity of losing Wentz and then overcoming that and getting done what they did. A lot of them were talking yesterday about after they lost to the Saints, and they just got demolished down there, that Doug Peterson talked to his veteran leaders, his leadership group, and said, it's on you guys now. I need you to really rally these guys and get them to realize that we still have something to play for, but, we're out of time. We got to do it now. And the veterans and the leadership group really brought this team together and got them over that hump and somehow got them refocused on the task of getting on this run where they've won 5 out of their last 6 games. So I think the veteran leadership certainly played a role in their success, and whether or not they go on a run here, I think is going to be due to that. Now, a lot of people make noise of, well, this team has playoff experience, this one doesn't. You're going to hear that a lot this week, I think, about the Bears versus the Eagles. The Eagles have the playoff experience. They know how to make a run to the Super Bowl. The Bears do not. but the Eagles didn't last year. So sometimes I think that can be overblown, but that's what this team's identity, I think, is at this point. We were trying to spend all season figuring out what is their identity. Their identity is a team that doesn't panic, that never really counted themselves out. And as a result, they feel they have a chance to win every game they go into. They're not intimidated by any one of these teams. And if they do beat Chicago and get another shot at the Saints, I think that's something this team will rally around, looking to get revenge. The same building they lost to, what will have been almost 2 months before, is a chance to rectify that and continue on their road to potentially, the NFC Championship games.
Scott, you don't have any C's, D's, or F's on your score sheet. There's only A's, mostly A's, only a couple B's. So it seems like from your perspective, you walked away from yesterday's game saying, look, was this arguably one of the best performances that this team has put up this year?
Well, everybody went into that game thinking it's all on whether or not the Bears beat the Vikings. But, the Eagles did have to play a game, and they had to play it well. And it started, on the first play of the game for Rasul Douglas to get that interception. To me, that really helped set the tone early on. And then you play it out down a little bit later. And when Foles threw his, it was like, oh, maybe this is going to be a little bit of a rocky game. Then the guy settled down, 25 straight completions, tied an NFL record. That, to me, was extremely impressive, the way that Foles managed, and it's not like he just had these dump-offs the whole time. Of those 25 passes, some of them were in very tight coverage. His receivers helped him out. Alshon Jeffrey made some nice catches. Nelson Aguilar did a nice job as well. And so it was the way they won. They took a lesser opponent for sure, and they certainly made them look that way on both sides of the ball. The way Fletcher Cox got 3 sacks in the game, the defensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. The offensive line opened up big holes for the running backs. And as a result, they were able to run the ball. They were able to grind out the clock over 43 minutes of time of possession. It was just, in every sense of the word, dominating. And I think that's what impressed me the most, was the way that team went in there, didn't pay attention to the scoreboard a lot. It's human nature to continue to look up there. They stayed focused on, we have to win, and then we'll worry about what happened. And that's the way I read it. Those guys worried about their job and then let everything fall into place, and that's what happened.
Scott, looking at your grades, Nick Foles got an A, obviously, and he's been special the last 2 weeks and good, basically the overall weeks that he's been playing so far in this run. What are you seeing particularly for him that's making this magic kind of resurface this year? Is it as well as it was last year? And do you see the Eagles, at least with Nick Foles, being a team that could kind of make a run here?
I definitely do. I think that this team can win this game in Chicago. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be a good game. But I think they have the ability and the experience to maybe rattle a young quarterback like Trubisky, and with the schemes and the things that Schwartz can do. This defensive line can definitely get in his face. And when that happens, all bets are off. You can make mistakes. On the other side, you mentioned Foles, and I talked about how this team and maybe its identity is that it never panicked. He's a guy who never panics. I mean, it is very impressive to watch how calm and composed he is, even when it seems like things aren't going well. He's talked before about having to have a short memory as a quarterback. He made that bad pass, who I don't even still know who that was intended for, that was intercepted. But he came right back out on the next possession, got right back to work, and led the team down the field. And I think that is kind of, this team feeds off of that. Not that Carson Wentz was panicky or anything like that ever, but they certainly are feeding off of that with Foles. And, I think depending on your quarterback, you have a different identity here and there, especially as an offense. And this team is certainly taking its cues from Foles at this point. They certainly got good news today with his ribs being just bruised, and it looks like he will play next weekend. So, they're gonna go with Foles. They're gonna ride with him, and they're gonna feed off of him. And I think this offense certainly takes its cues from him. One thing that you definitely have to respect is you see a lot of the Wentz to Ertz connection, and there's certainly a chemistry there that's not there with other receivers. I'm starting to feel that way about Foles and Jeffrey. Foles likes to give Jeffrey the chance to win a jump ball, and I think that's who Jeffrey is. He's not a guy who's going to break away and get it in the open field. He's a guy who, you throw it up to me, I'll make sure I win the battle and get that ball. And it's been impressive to watch Jeffrey here over the last few weeks as well.
Scott, I'm going to ask you this question, and it's going to be asked a lot of times to various Eagles writers and all types of things, and it's about Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. Obviously, you look at the graphic on ESPN, and the first thing at the bottom where it says Eagles-Bears, it says Eagles are 4-1 with Foles and 5-6 with Wentz. If magic strikes again and the Eagles are able to complete this run, even get to the Super Bowl, not even win it, with Nick Foles at the helm, what do you do as an organization going back to Wentz and kind of get – because Foles can't be on this team next year if that happens again. I mean, I don't think Wentz would survive it. Not that he's not tough enough or he's not mentally tough enough. I just don't think that that's fair to him to ask him to survive that type of scrutiny and comparison, et cetera. How do you look at that situation if those things do occur?
Well, it's funny. I mean, I think there's two different senses here. There's the fans and that kind of the people outside of the building, so to speak, and the people inside the building. This team says, and I believe every word they say, even a lot of us in the media were talking after the game last night, sort of similar situations, but it's, to me and to the media and to the people around the team that close, it's Carson Wentz. He is the franchise quarterback. He's the future of this franchise. There is really no way that they will take and pay Foles to be a starting quarterback and make Wentz either a backup or trade him. He is the guy. He's the guy they want. He's the guy they drafted. They gave away a lot to get him. And look, he was an MVP candidate last year before everything went downhill with the injury. And I still think the injury this year was what affected his play. I think he's going to come back next year. He's going to be strong. He's going to be healthy. He will have had an off season of workouts once he gets over this back issue. And I think Wentz is going to return to form. To me, and I was saying this to John McMullen, we carpooled down yesterday together. And he agrees with me. Foles is not a 16-game quarterback. He just isn't. He's tried that. He's been that. It hasn't been successful. What Foles is a great guy to go to the bullpen with and to have come in and close out the game for you. That's what he did last season. He finished the season. This year, he finished the season, got him into the playoffs, and who knows what's going to happen here. Either way, does Foles get into the Ring of Honor for the Eagles? I think, yes, he deserves to be in there one day. But I don't see him being a starting quarterback here. He's just not. And somebody's going to give him a chance to be a starting quarterback in over 16 games. I love Foles. I love who he is. I love what he does. He's not that. And I think, he's found a role, and it's been very successful for him. And the Eagles are benefiting. He's benefiting. It's a lot of fun to watch along the way. But right now, this is Carson Wentz's team. And over the next 10 years, the Eagles as a franchise are better off with Wentz than they are with Foles.
Scott Grayson joining us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. You check out all of his Grayson's grades and all of his post-game coverage from the locker room at 97.3 ESPN.com and on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Scott, one of the guys you gave an A to is Jim Schwartz, and Schwartz has taken a lot of criticism this year, fair and unfair, but I think that what we saw is over the last few weeks has been the best this defense has played, the best this defensive line has played, and I think people, they're maybe a little bit, shall I say, hesitant to or not ready to give Schwartz the credit that he deserves, because at the end of the day, he is the one calling out the play calling. You have an offensive-minded head coach, so he's not really in charge of the defense. This is Schwartz's defense, pass or fail, and yesterday you gave him an A.
Yeah, I mean, look, he took a young, inexperienced quarterback, and he just owned him. They shut down the run, and they took advantage of Josh Johnson. Now, Schwartz has been criticized this year, and I've been one of them criticizing him. They haven't held leads late in games. But his team lately and on this run, they've had the ability to play with a lead early in the game. That really helps set a tone where you can make a team more one-dimensional. And that's, I think, what has really helped this Eagles defense. Look at the issues they had in the secondary. It's because they weren't getting pressure, because the opponent was playing with the lead, where they can run the ball. They can really afford to, draw out some drives and afford to have a 1-yard run, a 2-yard run, and then maybe move the chains. Here, and lately with a lead, you start panicking when you get behind by 3, by 7, by 10, by 2 possessions, and things start going downhill for the opponent, and the Eagles can smell blood in the water, and they go after them, and they can pin their ears back, and they can. And I'm thinking that's going to kind of be the game plan with Trubisky. Certainly he's a better quarterback than Josh Johnson, but he is a young quarterback, still seeing things in the NFL for the first time, and you can really try to do some things to make him make mistakes. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to try to do, what Schwartz will try to do. But I think the biggest thing for this defense is just being able to see the offense get off to a better start, the defense has been able to do better. It's giving the offense shorter fields. The offense is cashing in. It really is a snowball going downhill. And when that happens, all sides of the ball feed off each other. Everybody gets happy. They have more fun. You win games. And next thing you know, you're in the playoffs. And that's right now the way things are going for this team. And this defense has certainly been setting the tone. I think they're going to need to set the tone in Chicago. Again, confusing a young quarterback. They're going to have to play well against the run, win the line of scrimmage. And if you can give your offense a shorter field to work with against a defense like that, maybe you get 3 here, and then finally you break through, and suddenly things start getting better. I've been impressed with the way this defense has played. Malcolm Jenkins went to Jim Schwartz midway through the season or a little bit later than that and said we need to maybe just dumb down the defense a little bit. We have so many guys who are fresh and new and young in the secondary that just don't understand some of the complexities of what they're doing. And having done that, they're getting more pressure. The corners don't have to cover as long. And what do you know? They've tackled better, and they're forcing turnovers. All of that feeds upon each other. And a lot of credit goes to Schwartz lately, I think, in this run that they're on right now.
Scott Grayson joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline. Check out all of his work at 97.3 ESPN.com, his videos from the locker room, as well as his Grayson's grades. And Scott, looking forward to hearing from you after the Bears game in Chicago. Of course, we will have all the coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kickoff is scheduled for 4:40 p.m. Eastern, which is 3:40 p.m. Central. And I say that because I know you, Scott, will be in Chicago for that game.
Yeah, good times. Hopefully it won't be foggy.
Yeah, hopefully not. We don't need a repeat of that game, Scott.
Happy New Year,
Appreciate
Scott.
the time on today.
Happy New Year's to you too.